At a wedding neither wanted to attend, Naomi and Julian find a connection that defies their guarded hearts. But when secrets from his past threaten their fragile trust, will love survive the truth? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Naomi Rivers stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror and forced a smile. The bridesmaid dress, a soft pink that complemented her olive skin, fit perfectly, but her eyes told a different story. At 25, she had already learned how quickly love could turn into pain. "You look beautiful," said Lisa, her roommate, adjusting the strap of Naomi's dress. "And Melissa's wedding is going to be amazing. Try to have some fun, okay?" Naomi nodded, but the memory of finding her ex-boyfriend with another woman just 3 months ago still felt fresh. "I'll try. It's just hard watching someone else get their happy ending." "Not all men are like Ryan," Lisa reminded her. "Some, actually, keep their promises." Naomi grabbed her purse and sighed. "I'll believe it when I see it." Across town, in a spacious penthouse overlooking the city, Julian Thorne adjusted his tie with practiced precision. At 30, he was at the peak of his professional life as CEO of Horizon Publishing, one of the country's largest publishing houses. The business magazines called him brilliant. His employees called him demanding but fair. Few people knew the man behind the polished exterior. His assistant, Marcus, checked his watch. "The car is waiting, Mr. Thorne. Are you sure you want to attend? I can send your regrets." Julian picked up an expensive camera from his desk. Photography had been his private passion for years, a way to see the world without being seen. "David was my roommate in college. I promised I'd be there." What Julian didn't say was how much he dreaded these social events. Ever since losing Catherine 2 years ago, he'd retreated into work, avoiding anything that might crack the carefully constructed walls around his heart. The luxurious hotel ballroom was decorated with white roses and twinkling lights. Naomi stood near the bar, watching couples swirl across the dance floor. Melissa, radiant in her wedding gown, had never looked happier. "Another glass of champagne?" the bartender asked. "No, thanks." "One is my limit," Naomi replied, remembering how her father's drinking had torn her family apart when she was a teenager. Some wounds went deeper than others. She checked her phone, seeing a text from her mother. "Hope you're having fun, sweetheart. Don't close your heart forever." Naomi put the phone away. Her mother meant well, but she didn't understand. Trusting, someone again felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. At the entrance, Julian nodded at acquaintances, but kept moving, avoiding small talk. His eyes scanned the room through habit, noting details others missed. The nervous flower girl hiding behind a table, the father of the bride discreetly wiping a tear, the strain behind the smiles of a couple arguing in whispers. David spotted him and came over with a warm hug. "Julian, you actually came!" "Congratulations," Julian said, meaning it despite his discomfort. "Melissa looks happy." "She is. We are." David looked over Julian's shoulder, suddenly concerned. "Hey, have you seen anyone taking photos?" "The photographer was supposed to be here an hour ago." Julian hesitated, then lifted his camera. "I could take some shots until he arrives." David's face lit up. "Would you? That would be amazing. Melissa would kill me if we didn't have pictures of the cake cutting." Before Julian could answer, David was called away by a relative. Julian found himself alone again, but now with a purpose. He began moving around the edges of the room, capturing candid moments, laughter, tears, embraces. Through his lens, he saw a young woman in pink standing apart from the crowd. Something about her solitude resonated with him. He zoomed in slightly and saw her eyes, beautiful but guarded, watching the celebration with both longing and fear. Naomi felt someone watching her and turned to see a tall man with a camera. Unlike the typical wedding photographer in a bland suit, this man wore an expensive tuxedo that fit him perfectly. His dark hair was slightly too long, and his face, though handsome, looked like it had forgotten how to smile easily. Impulsively, she walked over to him. "Are you the photographer who's running late?" Julian lowered his camera, surprised by her direct approach. "No, I'm just filling in temporarily." "Well, just filling in temporarily. Would you mind taking a picture that doesn't make me look like I'm at a funeral instead of a wedding? Naomi surprised herself with her boldness. For the first time that evening, Julian felt a genuine smile form. I don't think that's possible. You have sad eyes. Instead of being offended, Naomi laughed. Wow. Most people at least pretend not to notice. I notice everything. It's both a gift and a curse, Julian admitted, finding her refreshing after years of people who only showed him what they thought he wanted to see. So you're a photographer and a philosopher, Naomi teased. Neither, actually. Julian raised his camera again. But I can take your picture if you'd like. Only if you promise to capture the real me, not just what's on the surface. Something shifted in Julian's expression. I never capture anything else. He took several photos of her, and for the first time, Naomi didn't feel the need to force a smile. There was something about this stranger that made her feel seen, really seen, in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I'm Naomi, by the way. Naomi Rivers. Julian, he replied, deliberately omitting his last name. For this one night, he didn't want to be Julian Thorne, the CEO everyone approached with agendas and expectations. The real photographer arrived shortly after, apologizing profusely about car trouble. Julian handed him the camera's memory card, having already transferred the images to his phone. He should have returned to the shadows then, but something kept him near Naomi. So, Julian, no last name. How do you know the happy couple? Naomi asked as they found themselves at the same table for dinner. David and I were roommates in college. You? Melissa and I worked together at the art gallery before she moved to the museum. I'm still at Westside Gallery, organizing events and occasionally displaying my own work. You're an artist? Julian asked, genuinely interested. Naomi shrugged. I paint sometimes. Nothing serious. What about you? What do you do when you're not rescuing wedding memories? Julian hesitated. I work in publishing. That sounds interesting. What kind of books? All kinds, he said vaguely, steering the conversation back to her. What do you paint? Moments, emotions, things people feel but can't always express. She looked away, suddenly self-conscious. That probably sounds pretentious. Not at all, it sounds honest. Julian studied her face, seeing pain beneath her casual demeanor. You've been hurt recently. Naomi stiffened. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who recognizes the look. Julian's voice softened. I've worn it myself. Something in his tone made Naomi meet his eyes. What she saw there was unexpected. Not pity, but understanding. For the first time since her breakup, she felt the urge to talk about it with someone who might actually comprehend the depth of her pain. My ex-boyfriend cheated on me after 3 years together. I found out in the worst possible way. Julian nodded, not offering empty platitudes. And now you're afraid to trust again. Wouldn't you be? Julian's eyes darkened with memories. I understand completely. Before Naomi could ask what he meant, the music changed to a slow song and couples moved to the dance floor. Would you like to dance? Julian asked, surprising himself with the invitation. Naomi hesitated, then nodded. Why not? It's a wedding, after all. On the dance floor, Julian kept a respectful distance while still holding her close enough to smell her perfume. Something light, with hints of jasmine. He couldn't remember the last time he'd danced with anyone. You're not going to step on my toes, are you? Naomi asked with a small smile. I'll try my best not to, Julian replied, though I'm out of practice. Me too. My ex wasn't much of a dancer. As they moved slowly to the music, Naomi found herself relaxing in Julian's arms. There was something solid about him, something trustworthy despite his mysterious air. Why do I get the feeling there's more to you than you're letting on? She asked. Julian tensed slightly. Everyone has their secrets. Fair enough. I have plenty of my own. Naomi looked up at him. But it's nice, isn't it? Being with someone who doesn't know all your history, all your mistakes, like a clean slate. Julian nodded, feeling a weight lift momentarily from his shoulders. Yes, it is. As the evening progressed, they found themselves gravitating toward each other between Julian's impromptu photography sessions. He took more pictures of Naomi than anyone else, capturing her in unguarded moments, laughing with friends, wistfully watching the couple's first dance, standing alone on the balcony with starlight in her hair. Later, as the party wound down, they sat at an abandoned table sharing stories, carefully edited on both sides. Julian talked about his love of photography, but not his position at Horizon. Naomi described her art but skimmed over the depth of her heartbreak. "It's strange," Naomi said, twirling an empty champagne flute between her fingers. "I feel like I can talk to you more easily than people I've known for years." "Sometimes strangers see us more clearly than friends," Julian replied. "They have no expectations to cloud their vision." Naomi studied his face. "And what do you see when you look at me, Julian?" His answer came without hesitation. "Someone afraid. Of being hurt again, but brave enough to still be here, still hoping. Someone with a beautiful smile that doesn't always reach her eyes." Naomi blinked rapidly, unexpectedly moved by his perception. "And you? What are you afraid of?" Julian's phone buzzed before he could answer. He checked it with a frown. "I'm sorry, I have to take this." While he stepped away to take the call, Naomi watched him, intrigued by the way his entire demeanor shifted, becoming more commanding, more distant. When he returned, the easy connection between them had diminished. "Work emergency," he explained, tersely. "I need to go." Disappointment washed over Naomi. "Of course, it was nice meeting you, Julian." He hesitated, then took out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal number, if you'd like to see the photos I took of you tonight." Naomi took the card, noticing it had only his first name and number, no company information. Another mystery about this man. "I'd like that," she said softly. Julian reached out and briefly touched her hand. "Naomi, thank you for making this evening unexpectedly pleasant." After he left, Naomi looked at the simple card in her hand. Something about Julian had touched a place in her heart she thought was frozen. It was terrifying and yet somehow hopeful, like seeing the first green shoot after a long winter. She slipped the card into her purse, unaware that this chance meeting at a wedding was about to change the course of both their lives in ways neither could imagine. The next morning, Naomi woke with memories of the wedding and Julian still fresh in her mind. She found herself looking at his card, wondering if she should text him. It seemed ridiculous to feel such a connection with someone she'd just met, especially when her heart was still healing. Lisa knocked on her bedroom door. "So, did you have fun last night? You came home pretty late." Naomi smiled despite herself. "I met someone interesting." "Interesting how? Tall, dark, handsome, interesting, or weird but fascinating interesting?" "Both, maybe." Naomi sat up in bed, hugging her knees. "His name is Julian. He was taking photos at the wedding, but he wasn't the official photographer. We talked, we danced, it was nice." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Just nice?" "Okay, it was more than nice. He seemed to really see me, you know, not just what I wanted him to see." "Are you going to call him?" Naomi looked at the card again. "I don't know. Maybe." Across town, Julian sat in his office reviewing contracts but finding his mind wandering to the woman in pink from the wedding. He'd downloaded the photos he'd taken and found himself lingering on the images of Naomi, her smile, her thoughtful expression as she watched the couple dance, the vulnerability in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. Marcus entered with a stack of papers. "Sir, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes, and Ms. Parker from marketing needs your approval on the new campaign." Julian nodded, closing the photo files. "I'll be there shortly. Also, Mr. Bradford called again about your dinner next week. He mentioned bringing his daughter along. Apparently, she's a big fan of your work." Julian suppressed a sigh. Richard Bradford, one of his major investors, had been not so subtly trying to set him up with his daughter for months. Before meeting Naomi, he might have reluctantly agreed. Now the idea held even less appeal than before. "Tell him I'd prefer to keep it a business dinner," Julian replied. Marcus looked surprised but nodded. "Very well, sir." Alone again, Julian found himself reopening the photos. One in particular caught his attention. Naomi standing on the balcony looking up at the stars with a mixture of hope and fear on her face. Without overthinking it, he picked up his phone and typed a message. "The photos from last night turned out well, especially yours. Would you like to see them?" Julian His finger hovered over the send button. Was he making a mistake? He'd carefully avoided personal entanglements since Catherine's death, throwing himself into work instead. Opening himself up to someone new meant risking pain again. Before he could decide, his phone rang with a call from the London office. Work beckoned, as it always did. Julian put his phone down without sending the message, telling himself he would decide later. But as the day wore on, filled with meetings and decisions, the image of Naomi Rivers kept returning to his mind, a splash of color in his grayscale existence. 3 days after the wedding, Naomi sat at her desk in the West Side Gallery, trying to focus on planning the upcoming exhibition. Her mind kept drifting to Julian and the mysterious connection they'd shared. She'd almost convinced herself it had been nothing special, just wedding magic that wouldn't survive in daylight. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. The photos from the wedding turned out well, especially yours. Would you like to see them? Julian. Naomi's heart skipped. She hadn't expected him to actually reach out. After a moment's hesitation, she replied, I'd love to see them. Should I be worried about how I look? His response came quickly. No, you look real. That's rare. Naomi smiled at his words. There was something refreshing about his directness, so different from Ryan's smooth charm that had turned out to be nothing but lies. When can I see them? She texted back. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? Around 4? Naomi checked her calendar. She had planned to visit her mother, but that could wait. Yes, where? Julian suggested a small cafe near the gallery. As she confirmed the meeting, Naomi felt a flutter of nervousness. Was this a date, or just a photographer sharing his work? The next day, Naomi arrived at the cafe 5 minutes early, choosing a table by the window. She had changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue blouse that Lisa always said brought out her eyes. Julian walked in exactly at 4, looking different in casual clothes, dark jeans and a grey sweater that made his eyes appear more silver than blue. Without the formal tuxedo, he seemed younger but no less intense. Hi, Naomi said, suddenly feeling shy. Hello, Naomi. Julian sat down across from her, placing a folder on the table. It's good to see you again. You too. I was afraid you might have second thoughts about meeting. I almost did, he admitted, surprising her with his honesty. I'm not great at this sort of thing. What sort of thing? Showing photos to the subjects. A hint of a smile crossed his face. Social interactions in general. After ordering coffee, Julian opened the folder, revealing several printed photographs. These are just a few. I have more on my laptop. Naomi looked through the images, stunned by what she saw. Unlike typical wedding photos with forced smiles, these captured genuine moments, including several of her that made her breath catch. In one, she was laughing at something, her face transformed by joy. In another, she stood alone with a wistful expression that revealed more vulnerability than she was comfortable seeing. These are... I don't know what to say. She looked up at him. You have a gift, Julian. You see things most people miss. It's just about paying attention, he said, though she could tell the compliment pleased him. Most people are too busy thinking about what they'll say next to really see who they're talking to. Is that why you prefer being behind the camera, so you can observe without participating? Julian's expression shifted slightly. That's perceptive. I'm an artist too, remember? We notice things. Naomi held up a photo of herself looking at the stars. How did you make me look so what? I don't know, hopeful maybe. I haven't felt hopeful in months. Julian's eyes met hers. Perhaps you felt it just then, even if only for a moment. They fell into conversation easily, talking about photography, art, and their shared love of capturing emotions rather than just images. Julian carefully steered the discussion away from specific details about his work, mentioning only that he worked with authors in publishing. Do you enjoy it? Naomi asked. Your job, I mean. It's demanding but fulfilling, Julian replied. Though lately it's consumed too much of my life. I know what you mean. After my breakup, I threw myself into work. It was easier than facing the emptiness in my apartment. Naomi stirred her coffee. My ex Ryan and I were together for 3 years. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted. Then, I found out he'd been cheating for months with his assistant. Julian's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing that I never really knew him, that the person I loved was just a mask he wore. Naomi looked away. Sorry, I didn't mean to dump all that on you. Don't apologize. It helps to talk about painful things sometimes. Julian hesitated, then added, I lost someone too. My fiancée, Catherine. Naomi's eyes widened. Julian, I'm so sorry. It was 2 years ago. Car accident. His voice was controlled, but Naomi could see the grief still etched in the lines around his eyes. After that, I just retreated. Work became everything. And now? Naomi asked softly. Julian looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Now I'm sitting in a cafe with an interesting woman, wondering if I remember how to have a normal conversation. I think you're doing just fine, Naomi said with a small smile. Their coffee turned into dinner at a nearby restaurant, where they continued talking until the staff began putting chairs on tables. Throughout the evening, Julian took occasional photos of her with a small camera he pulled from his pocket. Is this a habit of yours? Photographing all your dinner companions? Naomi asked, only half joking. No, Julian said simply. Just you. The directness of his answer made her blush. As they left the restaurant, Julian walked her to her car, the night air cool against their skin. I had a nice time, Naomi said, feeling strangely nervous. So did I. Julian looked at her intently. Would you like to see more of my photography sometime? I have a small studio at my apartment. Naomi hesitated. Going to his home felt like a big step, especially with someone she barely knew. Yet something about Julian made her want to trust him, despite her recent experience. Maybe we could meet somewhere public first. There's an exhibition at the museum this weekend I've been wanting to see. Julian nodded, understanding her caution. I'd like that. Over the next 2 weeks they met several times, at museums, parks, and once for an impromptu photography session when Julian showed up at the gallery with his camera and asked if she'd pose for him. Each time, Naomi found herself opening up more, drawn to Julian's quiet intensity and the way he listened, really listened, when she spoke. Yet she couldn't ignore the feeling that he was holding something back, carefully editing his stories to reveal little about his daily life. At the gallery, her colleague Thomas noticed her improved mood. Someone's looking happier these days. New boyfriend? No, just a friend, Naomi insisted, though she wasn't sure that was true anymore. He's a photographer. Does this photographer have a name? Thomas teased. Julian. Naomi realized she still didn't know his last name, which seemed strange after spending so much time together. Well, whoever Julian is, he's good for you. You're smiling again. Meanwhile, at Horizon Publishing, Julian found himself distracted during meetings, his thoughts drifting to Naomi. He'd begun declining evening work events, something unheard of before meeting her. Sir, Mr. Bradford called again about the Hamilton manuscript, Marcus said, entering Julian's office. And there's a situation with the printing schedule for the fall lineup. Julian nodded, forcing himself to focus. Tell Bradford I'll call him back this afternoon and reschedule the print meeting for tomorrow morning. Also, sir, the industry dinner is tomorrow night. You're expected to give the keynote address. Julian had completely forgotten. Right. Thank you for the reminder. After Marcus left, Julian found himself looking at the new photos of Naomi on his laptop. He'd been keeping his position at Horizon from her, telling himself it was to preserve the genuine connection they were building. The truth was more complicated. He was afraid of how she'd react. As CEO of a major publishing house, he was used to people wanting something from him. With Naomi, he was just Julian, the man with the camera. He picked up his phone and texted her. Dinner tonight? There's something I want to talk to you about. Naomi responded quickly. Can't tonight. Working late on the new exhibition. Tomorrow? Julian stared at his phone, remembering the industry dinner. Can't tomorrow? How about Friday? Friday works. Everything okay? Julian typed. Yes, just miss seeing you. Then deleted it, writing instead. Yes. Looking forward to it. At the gallery, Naomi smiled at his text, then returned to hanging artwork for the new exhibition. Her colleague, Amanda, approached with a magazine. "Have you seen this?" she asked, opening to an article about the most eligible bachelors in the business world. "That publishing guy is giving a speech at some fancy dinner tomorrow night. The one whose fiancé died. In that accident." Naomi glanced at the article, only half interested. The photo showed a man in an expensive suit, his face partly turned away from the camera. Something about his profile seemed vaguely familiar, but the image was too small to be sure. "Julian Thorne," Amanda continued. "They say he's brilliant, but cold. Completely focused on work since his fiancée's death. Sad story, really." Naomi's hands froze in the act of adjusting a painting. Julian. It couldn't be the same person, could it? Her Julian was private, yes, but not cold. And surely, he would have mentioned being the CEO of a major publishing house. "Can I see that?" she asked, taking the magazine. The article described Julian Thorne as the reclusive genius behind Horizon Publishing's remarkable turnaround, and mentioned his tragic past and steadfast dedication to his company. It wasn't much to go on, but doubt had taken root in Naomi's mind. That night she searched online for information about Julian Thorne. There weren't many photos. He seemed to avoid publicity, but the few she found made her heart sink. Though more formally dressed and with a colder expression, it was unmistakably her Julian. Why had he hidden this from her? Was this all some kind of game to him? The betrayal felt painfully familiar, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. She picked up her phone to confront him, then put it down again. Better to wait until Friday. She wanted to see his face when she asked him why he'd lied. The next evening, Julian stood at the podium of the Grand Ballroom at the Westford Hotel, delivering his speech to the assembled publishing elite. He spoke confidently about the industry's future, but his mind kept returning to what he would tell Naomi on Friday. He needed to explain who he really was before someone else did. Unknown to him, Naomi was also at the hotel, delivering art pieces for an exhibition in the mezzanine gallery. As she supervised the hanging of a large painting, she overheard staff talking about the publishing dinner downstairs. "Mr. Thorne just arrived. Security said to make sure no one disturbs his speech." Naomi felt a pull of curiosity mixed with hurt. Before she could think better of it, she found herself walking downstairs toward the ballroom, telling herself she just wanted to confirm what she already knew. Through the partially open doors, she saw Julian on stage, commanding the attention of hundreds of people. He looked different somehow, more powerful, more distant. This was Julian Thorne, CEO of Horizon Publishing, not the gentle photographer who had captured her smile in the starlight. A security guard noticed her lingering. "Miss, this is a private event. Sorry, I was just..." Naomi stepped back, bumping into a server and causing a crash as a tray of glasses fell to the floor. The noise drew attention from inside the ballroom. Julian paused mid-sentence, his eyes finding Naomi in the doorway. For a moment their gazes locked, hers filled with hurt, his with surprise and something like resignation. Naomi turned and hurried away, ignoring Julian calling her name. She couldn't face him now, not with her emotions in such turmoil. All she could think was that she'd been fooled again, allowed herself to trust someone who hadn't been honest with her. Back in the ballroom, Julian attempted to continue his speech, but his usual composure had shattered. He rushed through the remaining points, then immediately tried to find Naomi, but she was gone. He called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. "Naomi, please call me back. I can explain everything. I should have told you sooner. I know that. Please, just give me a chance to talk to you." The next day, Julian cancelled all his meetings and went to the gallery, only to be told by a protective Thomas that Naomi wasn't there. "Whatever you did, she's upset," Thomas said, eyeing Julian's expensive suit with suspicion. "Maybe give her some space." Julian left his card, his real card, with his full name and title. "Please tell her I came by. Tell her I'm sorry." Naomi was actually at her apartment, ignoring Julian's calls and messages. Lisa found her curled up on the couch, staring at the photos Julian had given her. "Want to talk about it?" Lisa asked, sitting beside her. "He lied to me," Naomi said softly. "Or at least he never told me the whole truth. He's not just some photographer or publishing employee. He's Julian Thorne, CEO of Horizon Publishing. Wait, seriously, that Julian Thorne? Lisa looked impressed, despite herself. Why would he hide that? I don't know. Maybe he thought it was funny, playing normal with the naive gallery girl. Naomi wiped away a tear. Or maybe he just didn't trust me enough to tell me who he really is. Or maybe, Lisa suggested gently, he was afraid you'd treat him differently if you knew. Famous people often have trouble knowing if someone likes them for who they are or what they represent. Naomi hadn't considered that perspective. She remembered how relaxed Julian had seemed when they were together, how different from the commanding figure she'd glimpsed at the hotel. It doesn't matter why, she said finally. I can't be with someone who keeps secrets like that. I've been down that road before. Ryan cheated on you, Lisa pointed out. Julian just omitted some details about his job. It's more than that. It's about trust. Naomi picked up her phone, seeing 3 more missed calls from Julian. I thought I could trust him to be honest with me. Are you going to talk to him at least? Hear his side? Naomi hesitated. I don't know, maybe. At his penthouse, Julian paced restlessly, checking his phone every few minutes. Marcus watched with concern. Sir, you have a board meeting in an hour. Cancel it, Julian said abruptly. But, sir, the quarterly projections can wait, Julian finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. For the first time in 2 years, something mattered more to him than Horizon Publishing. Someone mattered more. He tried calling Naomi again, but still no answer. In desperation, he gathered the photos he'd taken of her, not just at the wedding, but during all their time together. Each image captured something special about her, her strength, her vulnerability, her capacity for joy despite past pain. Julian had one more idea. If Naomi wouldn't come to him, he would go to where she would eventually have to be, the gallery. But this time, he wouldn't just leave his card. He would leave something that spoke louder than words. The following morning, Naomi reluctantly returned to work, ignoring Thomas's curious glances and Amanda's not-so-subtle questions about why Julian Thorne had been looking for her. There's something in your office, Thomas said as she hung up her coat. It arrived early this morning. Special delivery. Naomi entered her small office and stopped short. The walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them, all of her. Images from the wedding, from their museum visits, from moments she hadn't even realized Julian was capturing. Among them were handwritten notes explaining what he saw in each shot, under a photo of her laughing. The moment I realized I wanted to make you laugh every day. Beside an image of her looking at a painting, your eyes see beauty others miss. They helped me see it again too. Near a picture of her deep in thought. You think I didn't tell you who I was, because I didn't trust you. The truth is, I was afraid of losing the way you looked at me, like I was just a man with a camera, not a name in a magazine. In the center of the display was a large envelope with her name on it. Inside, Naomi found a letter written in Julian's precise handwriting. Naomi, I've spent 2 years hiding behind my work, afraid to feel anything that might hurt me again. Then I met you, and for the first time since losing Catherine, I wanted to step out from behind the camera and be part of the picture again. I should have told you who I was. I convinced myself I was waiting for the right moment. But the truth is I was afraid. With you, I wasn't Julian Thorne, CEO of Horizon Publishing. I was just Julian, the man who sees you through his lens and finds himself wanting to be seen by you in return. I understand if you can't forgive this deception, but please know that everything else, every conversation, every shared moment was real. More real than anything I've allowed myself to feel in a very long time. These photos show how I see you. Not just your beauty, but your strength, your fear, your hope. I see all of you, Naomi, and I'm asking for the chance to show you all of me in return. I'll be at the cafe where we first had coffee tonight at 7. If you don't come, I'll understand, but I hope you will. Julian. Naomi's hands trembled as she lowered the letter. Around her, her colleagues had gathered at the office door, staring at the display with wide eyes. Well, Thomas said into the silence, are you going to meet him? Naomi looked around at the photos, at the way Julian had seen her, captured her essence in ways she hadn't thought possible. She touched one image of herself looking directly at the camera, her eyes full of a trust she'd thought was lost forever. "I don't know," she answered honestly. But as she said it, she realized her heart had already decided. Naomi stared at the clock on the gallery wall. It was 6:30 p.m., and Julian would be waiting for her at the cafe in 30 minutes. All day she had moved through her work in a daze, surrounded by the photographs he had left, tangible proof of how he saw her. "You should go," Thomas said, leaning against her office doorway. "Whatever he did, those pictures don't lie. That man sees something special in you." "He lied to me," Naomi said, though her resolve was weakening. "How can I trust anything else he says?" "Did he actually lie? Or did he just not tell you everything?" Thomas countered. "There's a difference." Naomi picked up one of the photos, herself, looking at a sculpture unaware she was being photographed. The note beside it read, "You look at art the way I wish someone would look at me, seeing beyond the surface to what lies beneath." "What if I'm making another mistake?" she asked softly. Thomas shrugged. "What if you're not? You can't protect yourself from every possible hurt, Naomi. That's not living, that's just existing." His words hit home. Since Ryan's betrayal, she had been existing, not living, afraid to trust, to hope, to open herself to possibility. Julian had begun to change that, making her feel alive again. "I need to change," she decided suddenly, looking down at her work clothes. 20 minutes later, Naomi rushed into her apartment, startling Lisa, who was watching TV. "I'm meeting Julian," she explained, heading straight for her closet. "Help me find something to wear." Lisa jumped up, surprised but pleased. "So you're giving him a chance to explain?" "I'm giving myself a chance," Naomi replied, pulling out a simple blue dress that Julian had once said matched her eyes. "A chance to be brave instead of safe." At 7:15, Naomi walked into the cafe, her heart pounding. Julian sat at the same table where they'd first shared coffee, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. His usual composed demeanor was gone, replaced by nervous tension. When he saw her, relief washed over his face. "You came," he said, standing as she approached. "I almost didn't," Naomi admitted, sitting across from him. Julian nodded, accepting this. "Thank you for being here." "Why didn't you tell me?" Naomi asked, getting straight to the point. "Why hide who you really are?" Julian took a deep breath. "At first it was just convenient. At the wedding, being anonymous felt freeing. Then when we started spending time together, I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of becoming Julian Thorne to you instead of just Julian." He looked directly into her eyes. "People treat me differently when they know who I am. They want something. Access to publishing contracts, connections, the status of being seen with me. With you, it was just real. So you didn't trust me enough to believe I'd treat you the same?" "No," Julian said quickly. "I didn't trust myself enough to believe I could be worthy of someone who wanted me for me, not for what I represent." He ran a hand through his hair. "After Catherine died, I retreated into my work, into the role everyone expected. Being with you made me feel like a person again, not just a position or a bank account." "You still should have told me," Naomi insisted, though her tone had softened. "You're right, I should have." Julian's voice was raw with regret. "I told myself I was waiting for the right time, but the longer I waited, the harder it became." Naomi was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "I saw the photos you left at the gallery. Did they help you understand?" "They show how I see you, Naomi. They're the most honest thing I could offer." "They're beautiful," she admitted. "But, Julian, I've been lied to before. I can't go through that again." "I didn't lie about anything else," he said earnestly. "Not about how I feel about you, not about my past with Catherine, not about what these weeks with you have meant to me." Naomi wanted to believe him, but fear still held her back. "How can I be sure?" "You can't." "Neither can I." Julian reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. "Trust isn't certainty, Naomi. It's choosing to believe despite the risk." His words resonated with something inside her, the part that had been drawn to him from the beginning, that had recognized in him a kindred, wounded spirit. "So where do we go from here?" she asked. "Anywhere you want, at any pace you're comfortable with." Julian hesitated, then added, "I just want the chance to show you that I can be honest with you, that I want to be." Naomi considered his words. The hurt of his deception was real, but so was the connection they'd formed. "I think I'd like to start over, properly this time." Relief washed over Julian's face. "I'd like that too." "So," Naomi said, extending her hand across the table, "I'm Naomi Rivers. I work at the West Side Gallery and paint when I'm feeling brave enough." Julian smiled, taking her hand. "Julian Thorne, CEO of Horizon Publishing by day, photographer by passion, and very, very glad to meet you, Naomi Rivers." Their fresh start began that night, with dinner and honest conversation. Julian told her about the pressures of running Horizon, the loneliness of his position, and how photography had become his escape from a world where everyone wanted something from him. Naomi shared more about her painting, her fears of never being good enough, and her struggle to trust after Ryan's betrayal. In the weeks that followed, they built something new between them, still fragile, but stronger for having weathered its first storm. Julian invited Naomi to his penthouse, where she discovered his private photography studio, and walls covered with images that told the story of his life, including several painful photos of Catherine that he had never shown anyone else. "She would have liked you," Julian said quietly as Naomi studied a photo of a laughing woman with bright eyes. "Catherine always said I needed someone who would challenge me, not just agree with everything." "Tell me about her," Naomi said, sensing he needed to share this part of himself. Julian spoke of Catherine with love and respect, their meeting in college, their plans for the future, the car accident that had shattered everything. As he talked, Naomi realized she wasn't jealous of this ghost from his past. Rather, knowing he had loved so deeply made her understand him better. "After she died, I couldn't bear to take photos for almost a year," Julian admitted. "Everything I looked at, through the lens, seemed empty." "And now?" Naomi asked. Julian's eyes met hers. "Now I see possibility again." As their relationship deepened, new challenges emerged. The first time they were photographed together leaving a restaurant, Naomi was unprepared for the flash of cameras, or the articles that appeared online the next day, speculating about Julian Thorne's new love interest. "Is this what your life is always like?" she asked, uncomfortable with the attention. "Not always, but often enough," Julian admitted. "I'm sorry, I should have warned you." More difficult was navigating the social circles Julian inhabited as CEO of Horizon. At a charity gala he invited her to, Naomi felt out of place among the wealthy elite, especially when she overheard two women whispering about her. "She works at some small gallery," one said dismissively. "Probably after his money like all the others." Julian noticed her discomfort and found her hiding near a potted palm. "What's wrong?" "I don't belong here," Naomi confessed. "These people look at me and see an outsider." "Then they're not seeing you at all," Julian said firmly, taking her hand. "And their opinion doesn't matter to me." Despite his reassurance, Naomi couldn't help feeling that their worlds were too different. Julian lived in a penthouse and made decisions affecting thousands of employees. She shared an apartment and struggled to pay her student loans from art school. Those doubts grew when Richard Bradford, one of Julian's major investors, cornered her at the bar. "So you're the one who's been occupying so much of Julian's time," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Quite a change from his usual type. "And what type is that?" Naomi asked, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Oh, Catherine was from one of Boston's oldest families, on the board of 3 charities, graduated summa cum laude from Yale." Bradford sipped his drink. "Julian needs someone who understands his world, don't you think? Someone who can be an asset to his position, not a distraction." The words stung, especially because they echoed Naomi's own insecurities. When Julian found her later, he could tell something was wrong. "What did Bradford say to you?" he asked, his jaw tightening when she reluctantly told him. "He had no right." "But was he wrong?" Naomi asked quietly. "Julian, we come from completely different worlds. I know nothing about board meetings or investor relations or any of the things that fill your days. And I know nothing about organizing gallery exhibitions or the best techniques for watercolors," Julian countered. "That's not what matters to me." "What does matter then?" Julian's expression softened. "That you see me, not the CEO, not the bank account, but me." that when I'm with you I feel more like myself than I have in years. His words reassured her temporarily, but the incident highlighted the challenges they faced. Julian's position meant public scrutiny and social expectations that Naomi found difficult to navigate. Meanwhile, at the gallery, Naomi's relationship with Julian brought unexpected attention. Wealthy collectors who had previously ignored her paintings suddenly showed interest, making her wonder if they valued her art or just her connection to Julian Thorne. "Mrs. Harrington bought 2 of your pieces," Thomas told her excitedly one afternoon. "She mentioned she met you at the pediatric hospital fundraiser with Julian. So she's buying them because of Julian, not because she actually likes them," Naomi said, her joy in the sale diminishing. "Does it matter? Your work is being recognized." "It matters to me," Naomi insisted. "I want to succeed or fail on my own merit, not because of who I'm dating." The issue came to a head when Julian surprised her with news about a potential exhibition. "I spoke to Marcus Levine at the Morton Gallery," he said over dinner at his penthouse. "He's interested in showing your work." Naomi put down her fork. "You what?" "I mentioned you were an artist and he asked to see your portfolio." Julian smiled, clearly expecting her to be pleased. "He's one of the most influential gallery owners in the city. Did you tell him I'm your girlfriend before or after you mentioned my art?" Naomi asked, her voice tight. Julian's smile faded. "Does it matter? This is a huge opportunity." "It matters to me," Naomi stood up, suddenly angry. "I don't want opportunities that come because of who I'm dating. I want to earn them myself." "That's not fair," Julian argued. "I just opened a door. Your talent is what will walk through it. But I'll never know if that door would have opened without your name attached to it," Naomi shot back. "Don't you understand? I need to know I'm good enough on my own." Julian's expression hardened. "So my support is unwelcome? I'm supposed to pretend I don't have connections that could help you?" "That's not what I'm saying." Naomi struggled to explain. I need my success to be mine, not something given to me because I'm with you." "Nothing is given in the art world, Naomi. Every artist needs connections, introductions. Why is it wrong if those come from me?" They argued for hours, neither fully understanding the other's perspective. Julian couldn't see why his help threatened Naomi's sense of self-worth, while Naomi couldn't articulate why maintaining her independence was so crucial after having lost herself in her relationship with Ryan. They parted that night with tension still hanging between them. The next day, Naomi was sorting through submissions for an upcoming exhibition when Lisa called. "Have you seen the business section today?" she asked without preamble. "No. Why?" "There's an article about Julian." "With photos?" Naomi felt a chill. "What kind of photos?" "Him having lunch with some blonde woman. The article says she's Victoria Hamilton, daughter of Senator Hamilton. Apparently they've known each other for years." Naomi tried to ignore the stab of jealousy. It was probably just a business lunch. The article quotes sources saying he's reconsidering his recent romantic choices and returning to more suitable social circles. Despite telling herself that tabloid speculation meant nothing, Naomi couldn't shake her worry. When Julian didn't call all day, the worry deepened. Was he having second thoughts? Had their argument made him realize they were too different after all? By evening, she couldn't stand the uncertainty. She called him, but the call went to voicemail. An hour later, she tried again with the same result. The next morning, Naomi arrived at the gallery to find a large envelope waiting for her. Inside was a newspaper clipping of the article Lisa had mentioned, with Julian's handwriting across it. "Don't believe everything you read." Also in the envelope was a small flash drive. Curious, Naomi plugged it into her computer and found a single video file. Opening it, she saw Julian sitting in what looked like his office. "Naomi," he began, looking directly at the camera. "I'm sorry about our argument. You were right. I didn't understand why my help felt like interference to you, but I'm trying to understand." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of his frustration. "The article you probably saw. Victoria is the daughter of a senator who wants Horizon to publish his memoirs. The lunch was strictly business, and the sources quoted are fabrications. But it made me realize something. This is part of my world. The constant speculation, the public scrutiny. And it's not fair to drag you into it without making sure you understand what you're getting into. Julian's expression softened. I love you, Naomi. I haven't said that yet because I wanted to be. Sure, now I am. I love the way you stand up for yourself, the way you refuse to let anyone, including me, define your worth. I love how you've made me feel alive again when I thought that part of me died with Catherine. He paused, vulnerability clear in his eyes. But I need to know if you can love all of me. Not just Julian the photographer, but Julian Thorne with all the complications that come with that name. Because I can't change who I am any more than I would want you to change who you are. The video ended, leaving Naomi staring at the blank screen, Julian's words echoing in her mind. He loved her. Despite their differences, despite her insecurities, he loved her. But was love enough to bridge their two worlds? That question followed Naomi through her day. By closing time, she had made her decision. Taking a deep breath, she called Julian. Can we meet? She asked when he answered. There's something I need to tell you in person. They agreed to meet, at a small park halfway between the gallery and his office. When Naomi arrived, Julian was already waiting, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I got your video, she said as she sat beside him on a bench. And? Naomi took a deep breath. I've been afraid, Julian. Afraid of losing myself in someone else again, afraid of not measuring up to your world, afraid of the person I might become. If I let myself love you completely. Julian started to speak, but she placed her fingers gently against his lips. Let me finish. Today I realized something. The person I'm afraid of becoming, someone dependent on a man for her identity, someone who can't stand on her own. That's not who I am with you. You've never asked me to be less than I am. You've only ever seen more in me than I saw in myself. She took his hand, her eyes meeting his. I love you too, Julian. All of you. The CEO, the photographer, the man who still grieves Catherine, the man who sees me through his lens in ways no one else ever has. Relief and joy transformed Julian's face. He pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion of the past weeks, the fear, the hope, the growing certainty that they had found something rare and precious in each other. When they finally drew apart, Naomi smiled. But I'm still not letting you arrange an exhibition for me. Julian laughed, the tension between them finally broken. Fair enough. Your career is yours to build. And the gossip columns? The business lunches with senators' daughters? Part of my life, but not the important part. Julian brushed a strand of hair from her face. The important part is right here. As they sat together in the fading evening light, Naomi felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Their worlds were still very different, their wounds still healing. But for the first time since meeting Julian, she could envision a future where those differences strengthened rather than divided them. Take a picture of this moment, she said softly. I want to remember it. Julian pulled out the small camera he always carried. What should I capture? Naomi smiled, her heart full. Us. Just us. The camera clicked, preserving the image. 2. People who had found each other despite their fears, despite their pasts, despite the walls they had built around their hearts. It wasn't a perfect picture. Both had shadows in their eyes that might never completely fade. But it was real. And, for Naomi and Julian, that reality was more beautiful than any airbrushed fantasy could ever be. What they didn't know, as they walked hand in hand from the park, was that their newfound happiness would soon face its greatest test, one that would force them both to decide, once and for all, if the love they had found was strong enough to survive not just their differences, but the return of ghosts they thought were long buried. 3 months into their relationship, Naomi and Julian had settled into a rhythm that bridged their different worlds. Naomi continued her work at the gallery while developing her painting in the evenings. Julian balanced his responsibilities at Horizon with making time for Naomi and his photography. Though challenges remained, they faced them together, growing, stronger with each obstacle overcome. On a crisp Saturday morning, Julian surprised Naomi with breakfast in bed at his penthouse, where she had begun spending most weekends. What's the occasion? Naomi asked, accepting a cup of coffee from him. No occasion. Julian sat beside her, his smile warm. Just grateful to wake up next to you. After breakfast, Julian seemed distracted, checking his phone more often than usual. When Naomi asked if something was wrong, he hesitated before answering. There's a charity event tonight for the Children's Hospital. I'm on the board and expected to attend. He took her hand. I'd like you to come with me. Naomi tensed slightly. Their last charity event hadn't gone well, with Bradford's cutting remarks and the obvious disapproval from Julian's social circle. Are you sure? Very sure. Julian's expression was earnest. I want everyone to know how important you are to me. Something in his tone made Naomi suspect there was more to this invitation, but she agreed. That afternoon, as she was getting ready at her apartment, Lisa burst in with a magazine. You need to see this, she said, her expression serious. As she handed it to Naomi, the glossy Society magazine featured a spread titled Publishing's Power Couple Reunites. With growing dread, Naomi saw photos of Julian with a striking woman at what appeared to be a restaurant. The caption identified her as Elizabeth Morgan, Julian Thorne's former flame, recently returned from Paris. Who is she? Naomi asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Lisa looked uncomfortable. I did some digging after seeing this. Apparently she and Julian were together before Catherine. When Catherine came into the picture, Elizabeth left for Europe. She's a major literary agent. Just moved back to head the New York office of Morgan Literary. Naomi stared at the photos, noting the easy familiarity between Julian and this woman from his past. They were clearly comfortable with each other, sharing what looked like private jokes. The article says they've been meeting to discuss a major publishing deal, Lisa continued, but sources hint at a rekindled spark between them. What sources? Naomi asked sharply. The same ones that linked him to Victoria Hamilton? I know, it's probably just gossip, Lisa conceded. But why? Didn't Julian mention meeting her? That question haunted Naomi as she finished getting ready. Julian had never mentioned anyone named Elizabeth, despite seemingly sharing his past with her. The omission felt significant, especially given their history of his keeping secrets. When Julian arrived to pick her up, Naomi was quiet, debating whether to confront him about Elizabeth. He noticed her mood immediately. Something wrong? He asked as they rode in his car to the event. Naomi decided directness was best. Who is Elizabeth Morgan? Julian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Where did you hear that name? It's all over the Society pages. You two looked very comfortable together. Julian sighed. I should have told you about her. Elizabeth and I dated years ago before Catherine. She left for Paris after we broke up. And now she's back, Naomi said, watching his profile. As a literary agent, you're doing business with? Yes. Horizon is negotiating for the memoir of one of her clients, a former president. It's potentially a huge deal for both of us. Is that all it is, business? Julian pulled the car over and turned to face her. Yes. Elizabeth is my past, Naomi. You're my present and, I hope, my future. His sincerity reassured her, but a small doubt remained. Then why hide it from me? I wasn't hiding it. Julian ran a hand through his hair. Elizabeth and I have a complicated history. She wanted marriage, I wasn't ready. When I met Catherine later, Elizabeth took it badly, left the country rather than see us together. And now she's back, just as you're in a new relationship. Naomi couldn't help seeing the pattern. It's coincidence, nothing more. She has no influence on my life or my feelings for you. Julian took her hand. I love you, Naomi. Only you. Naomi wanted to believe him, but the ghost of Ryan's betrayal whispered warnings. Still, she nodded, deciding to trust Julian until given reason not to. At the charity event, Naomi was making an effort to engage with Julian's colleagues when she froze at the sight of a woman approaching them, the same woman from the magazine photos. Up close, Elizabeth Morgan was even more intimidating. Tall, elegant, with the confident bearing of someone born to privilege. Julian, darling, Elizabeth said, air-kissing his cheek. I thought I might find you here. Elizabeth. Julian's greeting was polite but cool. I didn't know you were attending tonight. Last-minute invitation. The hospital director is an old family friend. Elizabeth turned her attention to Naomi, assessing her with a practiced smile. And this must be the gallery girl I've heard so much about. The dismissive term made Naomi bristle, but she kept her expression neutral. Naomi Rivers, and you're Elizabeth Morgan. I saw your pictures in the society pages. Elizabeth laughed lightly. Those ridiculous gossip rags, always making something out of nothing. She turned back to Julian. Did you get my message about the contract revisions? My client is quite insistent on the points we discussed. Marcus is handling the details, Julian replied. But yes, we're considering the changes. Excellent. Perhaps we should discuss it further over lunch tomorrow. The usual place. Before Julian could answer, Naomi excused herself, needing a moment alone. The usual place implied regular meetings Julian hadn't mentioned. In the quiet of the ladies' room, she took deep breaths, telling herself she was overreacting. Julian loved her. He'd chosen her. This was business, nothing more. When she returned, Julian was alone again, looking relieved to see her. There you are. I was getting worried. I'm fine, Naomi assured him, though she felt anything but. Elizabeth seems, familiar with you. We've known each other a long time, Julian admitted, but that doesn't mean anything now. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Naomi caught Elizabeth watching them several times, her expression unreadable. When Julian stepped away to speak with a board member, Elizabeth approached Naomi again. He seems quite taken with you, she said, sipping champagne. It's sweet, really. Julian always did have a soft spot for unconventional women. Is there something you want to say to me directly? Naomi asked, tired of the veiled comments. Elizabeth's smile sharpened. Just that I've known Julian for 15 years. I've seen his patterns, his phases. He's drawn to women who represent something different from his everyday world. First it was me, the rebellious debutante. Then Catherine, the brilliant academic. Now you, the struggling artist. If you're suggesting I'm just another phase, you don't know Julian as well as you think, Naomi replied evenly. Perhaps, or perhaps I know him better than anyone. Elizabeth leaned closer. Did he tell you we had lunch 3 times this week? Or that he's considering investing in my new literary agency? Julian and I have always understood each other on a level others can't comprehend. Before Naomi could respond, Julian returned, sensing the tension immediately. Everything okay here? Perfectly lovely, Elizabeth said smoothly. Just getting to know Naomi better. She's charming, Julian. I can see why you're entertained. As Elizabeth walked away, Julian turned to Naomi. What did she say to you? Nothing that matters if it isn't true, Naomi replied, studying his face. Have you been having lunch with her regularly? Julian hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but strictly for business. The deal we're working on is complex. And are you thinking of investing in her new agency? This time, Julian's surprise seemed genuine. She mentioned the possibility once, but I never seriously considered it. Is that what she told you? Among other things, Naomi felt torn between trusting Julian and the seed of doubt Elizabeth had planted. She seems very confident about her place in your life. Elizabeth has always been good at projecting confidence, Julian said, his jaw tight. It doesn't make her right. The drive home was quiet, both lost in their thoughts. When they reached Naomi's apartment, Julian turned to her, his expression troubled. Don't let Elizabeth come between us, he said softly. That's exactly what she wants. Is it? Naomi asked. Or is she just being honest about your history in a way you haven't been? What does that mean? It means you never mentioned her until I saw your picture together. It means she knows things about your life that I don't. It means once again I'm discovering parts of you from others, instead of from you. Julian looked pained. I didn't tell you about Elizabeth because she doesn't matter to my life now. Yes, we have history. Yes, we're working together temporarily, but there's nothing more to it than that. I want to believe you, Naomi said, her voice catching. But I've been here before, Julian. The careful omissions, the business meetings that aren't just business, the other woman who insists she knows him better than I do. I'm not Ryan, Julian said firmly, and Elizabeth isn't some random woman I'm having an affair with. She's a colleague from my past who's trying to manipulate the present. Naomi nodded, too emotionally exhausted to argue further. I need some time to think. Alone. Julian reluctantly agreed, though his eyes showed his fear of losing her. I love you. Naomi, only you, please remember that. The next week was agonizing for Naomi. Julian respected her request for space, though he sent a single text each day, not pressuring, just reminding her of his feelings. Thinking of you. Missing your smile. The light isn't the same without you to photograph. At the gallery, Naomi threw herself into work, trying to sort through her conflicted emotions. She wanted to trust Julian completely, but Elizabeth's words had awakened old insecurities. Was she just another phase for him? Would he eventually tire of her and return to someone from his own world? On Friday afternoon, Thomas handed her an envelope that had been delivered. Special courier. Seemed important. Inside, Naomi found a USB drive with a note in Julian's handwriting. The truth as I see it. Curious, despite her reservations, Naomi plugged the drive into her computer. It contained a single folder labeled Elizabeth, with emails, calendar, entries and meeting notes documenting every interaction Julian had had with Elizabeth since her return. The business discussions were clearly legitimate, with nothing personal or inappropriate in any of the exchanges. There was also a video file. Opening it, Naomi saw Julian in his office looking directly at the camera. I should have shown you. This from the beginning, he said. Elizabeth came back to New York a month ago and reached out about her client's memoir. I agreed to meet her because the book could be important for Horizon. I didn't tell you because, honestly, I didn't think she mattered enough to mention. Julian sighed, his expression troubled. That was a mistake, I see that now. After what happened with me hiding my identity, I should have been completely transparent with you about everything, including Elizabeth. I'm sorry for that failure. He leaned closer to the camera. But Naomi, you need to know the truth about Elizabeth. Yes, we have history. Yes, she's trying to insinuate herself back into my life. But my feelings for her ended long before I met Catherine, and they certainly haven't returned now that I've found you. Julian's eyes were earnest, his voice steady. I've included every interaction I've had with Elizabeth to show you there's nothing to hide, and I've made a decision. I'm recusing myself from the negotiations with her client. Marcus will handle everything from now on. My relationship with you is worth more to me than any business deal. The video ended with Julian simply looking at the camera, vulnerability clear in his expression. Naomi sat back, emotions conflicting within her. His transparency now was touching, but why had it taken her discovery of Elizabeth to prompt it? As she was wrestling with her thoughts, her phone rang. It was Lisa. You need to come home, she said, sounding strange, for there's someone here to see you. Who? Just come home, Naomi, it's important. 30 minutes later, Naomi opened her apartment door to find not only Lisa, but Elizabeth Morgan sitting in her living room, looking oddly out of place among the mismatched furniture and art supplies. Miss Morgan, Naomi said, surprised. How did you find where I live? I have resources, Elizabeth replied, standing, and what I have to say couldn't wait. Lisa gave Naomi a sympathetic look. I'll be in my room if you need me. Once they were alone, Elizabeth got straight to the point. Julian sent you his records of our meetings, didn't he? Naomi's surprise must have shown on her face. He told me he was going to, Elizabeth continued. That's actually why I'm here. What he sent you was incomplete. What do you mean? Elizabeth pulled out her phone. There were other meetings, ones he didn't document. She showed Naomi photos of herself and Julian at various locations, a park, a jewelry store, outside what appeared to be a residential building. In each they looked intimate, engaged in serious conversation. These were taken this week, Elizabeth said, while he was supposedly giving you space. Naomi felt sick. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know who you're really dealing with. Elizabeth's voice softened with what sounded like genuine concern. Julian has a pattern. He becomes infatuated, promises everything, then returns to what's familiar when the novelty wears off. And you're what's familiar, Naomi said flatly. We understand each other. We come from the same world. Elizabeth hesitated. Look, I don't expect you to believe me, but ask yourself this. If he has nothing to hide, why didn't he include these meetings in what he sent you? After Elizabeth left, Naomi sat motionless. The photos burned into her mind. Julian had promised complete transparency, yet these meetings were missing from his records. It felt like Ryan all over again. The lies, the other woman, the evidence she couldn't deny. She was still sitting there when her phone rang. Julian. Naomi? I know you asked for space, but I need to see you. There's something important I need to ask you. His voice sounded so sincere, so loving. How could he sound that way if everything Elizabeth had shown her was true? Elizabeth just left my apartment, Naomi said coldly. She showed me the photos, Julian. There was a moment of silence. What photos? Of you two this week. At the park, at a jewelry store, at some apartment building. Naomi fought to keep her voice steady. You said you sent me records of every meeting with her, but you lied. Again. Naomi, I can explain. No, I'm done with explanations. I'm done. With half-truths and finding out things from everyone but you. The pain in her voice was raw. We're over, Julian. Don't contact me again. She hung up before he could respond, then turned off her phone, finally allowing the tears to fall. Lisa found her curled on the couch, sobbing, and held her without asking questions. The next morning, Naomi went to the gallery despite Lisa's concerns. Work had always been her sanctuary, and she needed it now more than ever. She was hanging a new exhibit when Thomas approached, looking worried. There's someone here to see you, he said. Says it's urgent. Naomi steeled herself, expecting to see Julian. Instead, she found Marcus, Julian's assistant, waiting anxiously by the reception desk. Ms. Rivers, he said formally, I apologize for the intrusion, but this is important. If Julian sent you, he doesn't know I'm here, Marcus interrupted. That's part of why I came. He's been trying to reach you since last night. When he couldn't, Marcus hesitated. He's not well, Ms. Rivers. I've never seen him like this. Concern flickered, despite Naomi's anger. What do you mean, not well? He hasn't slept. He's been working non-stop on some project, refusing to explain. And he's made some concerning decisions. He's talking about selling his shares in Horizon, moving away. Marcus looked genuinely worried. Whatever happened between you, he's not thinking clearly. That's not my responsibility, Naomi said, though her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps not. But there's something else you should know. Marcus handed her a small file. About Elizabeth Morgan and those photos. Naomi opened the file to find a report from a private investigator, dated 2 weeks earlier. It detailed Elizabeth's financial troubles, her failing agency in Paris, and her desperate need for the advance from the presidential memoir deal. Mr. Thorne hired the investigator when Ms. Morgan first approached Horizon, Marcus explained. He suspected her motives weren't purely professional. Also in the file were screenshots of text messages between Elizabeth and a photographer, arranging staged photos of her with Julian. The meetings she showed you were real, Marcus continued, but the context was manipulated. The park was where Mr. Thorne informed her he was removing himself from negotiations. The jewelry store belongs to Mr. Thorne's cousin. He was picking up a family piece that had been repaired, and the apartment building is where his sister lives. Naomi felt the ground shift beneath her. Why would Elizabeth go to such lengths? The investigator's report suggests she's deeply in debt. Without the memoir deal and a substantial advance, her agency will collapse. She needed Mr. Thorne directly involved in negotiations. Naomi sat heavily on a nearby chair. Why didn't Julian tell me any of this? He was going. So that's what he wanted to see you about last night. Marcus hesitated. Ms. Rivers, there's one more thing you should know. The family piece Mr. Thorne was collecting at the jewelry store. He reached into his pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table beside her. Naomi stared at it, afraid to open it. His grandmother's engagement ring, Marcus said quietly, resized for you. The revelation hit Naomi like a physical blow. Julian had been planning to propose, while she had been believing the worst of him. Again. Where is he now? She asked, her voice barely audible. At his penthouse. He's been there since last night. Naomi stood, decision made. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. 30 minutes later, Naomi stood outside Julian's door, her heart pounding. When he opened it, she barely recognized him. The always composed CEO looked haggard, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair disheveled. "Naomi?" he whispered, as if afraid she might be a hallucination. Without a word, she walked into his arms, holding him tightly. "I'm sorry," she murmured against his chest. "I'm so sorry I didn't trust you." Julian held her as if she might disappear. "How did you know about Elizabeth, about everything?" "Marcus came to see me. He showed me the investigator's report, the text messages." Naomi looked up at him. "He also showed me the ring." Julian tensed. "That wasn't how I wanted you to find out." "I know. But Julian, why didn't you just tell me what was happening with Elizabeth from the beginning?" "I thought I was protecting you," he admitted. "When the investigator confirmed she was desperate for money, I worried she might target you somehow. I wanted to handle it quietly, without involving you in the ugliness. But that's exactly what allowed her to come between us," Naomi said gently. "Your silence gave her power." Julian nodded, the truth of her words evident in his expression. "I've made so many mistakes, Naomi. Keeping secrets, thinking I knew best, I promise you. No more shadows between us, complete honesty from now on." "That's all I've ever wanted," Naomi said. "Just you, the real you, with all your flaws and fears. Just as I need you to want the real me." Julian cupped her face in his hands. "I do. I love every part of you. Your strength, your independence, your fear of trusting that I'm learning to earn every day." He hesitated, then pulled away slightly, reaching for something on the side table, the small velvet box. "This isn't how I planned it," Julian said, his voice unsteady, "but I don't want to wait another moment." He opened the box, revealing a vintage ring with a single diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. "This was my grandmother's. She was an artist too, a photographer like me. She always said the right person sees not just your surface, but the depth of who you are." Julian knelt before her. "Naomi Rivers, you see me, not the CEO, not the name, but the man behind the camera who is still learning how to live again after hiding in shadows for too long. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Naomi's eyes as she looked at the man before her. Complex, flawed, still healing, just as she was. They had both been broken by their pasts, both afraid to trust again. But through his lens and through her eyes they had found something worth fighting for. "Yes," she whispered, her heart full. "Yes, I will." As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, Naomi knew their journey wouldn't be perfect. There would be more challenges, more misunderstandings, more moments when their different worlds collided. But they had found their way back to each other through honesty and love, a love strong enough to withstand both their fears and the ghosts of their pasts. 1 year later, Naomi stood in the garden of Julian's family estate, wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Around her, only their closest friends and family gathered to witness their vows. Julian waited for her under an arch of flowers, his camera, always his most honest voice, hanging around his neck. As Naomi walked toward him, he raised it one last time, capturing her image as she came to join her life with his. Later, that photograph would hang in their home, a reminder of the day they both stepped fully into the light, no longer afraid of what the camera might reveal. Through his lens, Julian had taught Naomi to see herself clearly again. Through her love, Naomi had taught Julian that some pictures are meant to be lived in, not just captured from a safe distance. And in that understanding, they found their happy ending not perfect but real, and in its reality, more beautiful than either could have imagined when they first met across a crowded wedding reception, each hiding behind walls that love would eventually bring tumbling down.